We are 6 women.
We are wordsmiths.
We are magic.
We are curious.
We are contradictions.
We are wanderers.
We are people of many names.
We are mind trekkers and story weavers.
We are adventurous spirits.
We continue to grow.
We've been baptized in the font of dream and memory.
We are partly truth and partly fiction.
I am Gail.
I am Joanne.
I am Margie.
I am Katie.
I am Marion.
I am Mary.
We are the Mystic Order of East Alabama Fiction Writers.
Welcome to the podcast of the Mystic Order of East Alabama Fiction Writers. Dear listeners, we're so glad to have you back. I am Mystic Joanne.
And I am Mystic Katie.
And I'm the Queen.
And I am the Nebulous Mystic.
Yes, but she's not going to give her name because the Queen doesn't give her name. But we're missing 2 mystics today.
Oh, wait, I'm not the Queen. I'm Mary.
I know you are, but the
Neither
Queen
you
does
nor
not
the
give
Queen
her
gave
name, so I
names.
thought you would not give your name. Oh, I'm sorry. Mystic moment. I just saw a lizard as long as my arm jump from Gail's roof over to a tree. Anyway, ADD mystic moment.
Squirrel.
We are missing 2 mystics today. We are missing Margie, who is
She's
our
hiking
artist.
with her daughter.
She is. She is off hiking with her daughter, which is a wonderful, mystical thing to do. And we're missing poor Marion. And she has been
She's not
struck
well.
down. She is not well. She's been struck down.
But she'll be back very, very soon.
And we miss them both. So we hope they are happy wherever they are. So,
I can tell you, Marion's sitting in front of the TV watching English mysteries. That's where she is.
Or, yes, but she also enjoys other mysteries, like even court TV. So that could be
Anything
something
that has
exciting.
to do with murder.
But
Exactly.
but we haven't had any good court cases yet coming up. There'll be some soon, I'm sure.
I just want to say I know that Margie is out taking photographs of wildflowers, fungi, lichen, things like that to put on
her
clothing.
dresses. Yes.
So
Wonderful.
look forward to all of her hiking adventures showing up on clothing.
Yes. Well, has anyone had a week that was mystic? Mystic Mary, what was your mystic week like?
My mystic week was spent deciding that some of my bits of writing needed a home. And so I sent out a bunch of sample columns, and I'm now a columnist for the Auburn Villager.
Yay!
You are.
Oh, that's so
And I was
sweet.
just about to drop my subscription. You have saved them that $8.
I have saved the $8. So I talked to him right before I came here, and don't have the details about when you can find my writings, but it's just nature stuff. It's my personal experiences with nature and then some information.
And
My good friend Rita Grimsley Johnson, I asked her what it was like to write a column every week. And she said, I said, is it tedious? And she goes, not the first 18.
Well, I'm ahead of that.
Years or columns?
But this is especially sweet because Mystic Mary's dad wrote a column for the Auburn.
Well, he wrote for every paper in town, and he got fired from every paper in town. But
Why was that?
Because
Was he
he's
a
just
firebrand?
mine.
Why? Was he a firebrand?
he was, he would get political and want to call people's names out.
Uh-oh, Mary's going to be fired.
No, she's not.
I'm keeping mine on natural history, so you guys have got to help me later with my name, but we won't involve the audience in that unless you want to write in.
Okay.
Well,
I was going to say, I
Congratulations.
have well over 20 already written, so I'm okay for the first 17.
Oh, good.
all she has to do is teach her class and then write it down.
I think I
You
have
have a
180
ready source of information.
180
Well, Katie,
ready.
you can speak to that because you write a column.
I do a monthly column, though, so weekly would be a challenge.
And that's for your gardening magazine.
For Alabama Living Magazine, which is the Rural Electric Association's magazine, and it's a statewide magazine, so it goes across Alabama. They have the largest readership of any magazine in the state because everyone who has rural electric power gets a copy of the magazine.
Nice.
So
Cool.
it's a great platform. But if I had to do it more than once a month, it would just not be done.
Do you do it the day before it's due?
No, the week though.
And Marion has a column.
Yes,
that's
that she's
right.
had for some time. So.
Well, we all probably ought to strive to have a column, except that I couldn't make it to the first 18.
I know.
I've been
you may
working
be
on
able
one
to.
poem for 2 weeks.
Well, that's, you just have to get a backlog and then come forward.
You could be the advice columnist.
I sure could.
There we go.
I could fill up the entire newspaper.
Wait, get a letter or two, and you just respond. And you would.
Yeah, everybody send me your problems.
If there's any publication out there listening, the Mystics would be happy to run a Mystic,
Right.
a Dear Mystics. We
Yes.
actually practiced on ourselves for a while. Gave ourselves a lot of good advice.
Yeah.
We did, and still have good advice to give. Ask the Queen. My mystic week was floating down the Coosa River.
Oh.
Good
Yeah.
weather for that.
Where did
too.
you enter the Coosa River?
We entered the Coosa River at the dam, and we got out at
Which is in what town?
in Wetumpka. It's all in Wetumpka.
Isn't that
yes.
dangerous to enter at the dam?
Well, below the dam. Below the
yeah,
dam,
you
right.
don't slide down the dam to start.
I figured you and
Slip
Jimmy.
off the top of the dam
figured
and-
y'all got a float and got up. Both of you are teeny people. You could use the
I was
same
going to
float.
say, although Jimmy has taken me to the dam slide that used to be in Auburn.
Oh, I know, and that is an Ogletree. Yeah, let me say though, it's more dangerous to be below the dam if they're about to open it.
Well,
True.
they were
Timing is
a
everything.
little open, but surely they would not have done that. But me and two my a brother and a sister and their spouses and a couple of nieces and their significant others, and we all got kayaks and came down the Coosa River, beat a horrible thunderstorm by about 10 minutes.
Wow.
Did you go through a little company there in Wetumpka?
Yes, we
Yeah,
did.
I've done that, and it is it costs about $30, and
Yeah.
you don't have to own the kayak,
Exactly.
and it is
And they put you in and take you out
Yes.
too. That
and
meet
they'll
you to take
have
out.
Such a good
and they do
deal.
have little boats that go up and down. So if you
When
get
they
in
meet
trouble,
you, is there a gin and tonic available?
oh yes,
if you put one in your cooler in your car, there is.
What? I want the company to show up.
in fact, we saw several young people with these lanyards around their neck and a koozie at the end of them when
Yes.
they kept their beer.
Oh, me.
Oh yes, it was lovely. It was about a
That's
3-hour
fun.
float, but the Coosa River is absolutely beautiful. And there was only one place where I let out an expletive. It was called Moccasin Gap.
I know that gap.
That one.
That's the river I went down with my dad.
Because you
and it
saw a
took-
moccasin or because you were gapped out?
Because
the
I
name
thought
of
I
it.
was going to be flung up against this huge rock. I thought I had gone left, and the river wanted me to go right.
Oh.
That's the one I made a 6-hour trip out of because I took my dad and he couldn't actually sit up or paddle, and I had to literally swim his kayak down the Coosa River, and thought I killed him on several occasions, but he survived, and so did I.
Well, and the river was up because that's why we chose that weekend, because they had let out a lot of water.
Mm-hmm.
But if it was down, I'm sure you had to portage and try to figure your way through the shoals a couple
It
of
was,
times.
me screaming at Daddy, "Let go of the kayak! I'll see you at the other side." And he'd go down backwards and underwater, banging his head on the rocks, and I'd think he's a goner.
He's a goner.
And he'd pop up like a little cork. So it was
That's
quite
wonderful.
something. Okay, sorry.
All right, yes. Katie, what have you been reading of interest?
So, I last summer, I guess, I read a book called The Plot by a writer called Jean Hanff. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Correlates, and the plot of The Plot was basically that this MFA, this professor who's teaching MFA classes steals a plot from one of his students, and it gets really complicated from there. And I thought it was a fascinating book because it was about writers and and quite twisted. And there were even some places in Alabama or North Georgia that they came to. So from the book went through. But anyway, she has a new book out called The Latecomer. And it is about 3 siblings who were all born of this all IVF or from harvested eggs that were implanted. So they're really the same age. Only they're not, because they were born,
They were
at different times. And they've spent their entire
interesting.
lives trying to get as far away from one another as they can. But it is fascinating. It is the best thing I've read in I don't know how long.
Ooh.
And it's all about the art world in New York City, as well as these interesting characters. So I just want to highly recommend The Latecomer.
The Latecomer.
And who was that written by again?
Jean Hanff, Hanff, Correlates. She's written a lot of books, but these are the Plot and this one are her 2 most recent. And
Nice.
Jean, Jean. So anyway, I just can highly recommend it, and it's just all these great twists and turns.
Fascinating. I'm finishing up a book, and that might be a good one to go to.
There's so many good books out there, so it's hard to pick just one. But this is
I know,
this is
and the one
can
that
feel-
I'm reading, the Queen has given me. So, Queen.
What was it?
It is the bookshop at Water's End.
I think I read it, but I don't remember it.
What are you reading now?
Last night at book club, I was pretty sure, I told Katie I'd read the book. She's in this book club.
Yeah.
And because I'd read Cloud Cuckoo Land, and we get there and she starts telling us all about the revival of
the final revival of Opal and Neb.
Opal and
which we
Ned, and she's
talked about
talking
on this
about
show
the
before.
plot. And I thought, I don't remember reading that in this story.
I was given a synopsis of it, and Gail was looking at me like, that's not even, I don't even know what you're talking about.
book. But I think what happened is you said you couldn't decide between those books, and I just put in my mind that that's what we were
Yeah.
reading now, and that's what I read.
But you didn't read your list because it was on the list.
I know I didn't. I just knew I knew it. So that's what old age will do for you.
But other people had read it, so I at least was not completely. They were all like, "Yeah, that was." The
I was
book."
trying to figure out where this was in the book I read, but anyway, I've often read the wrong book. Well, I read this week. I read "Everything Said Is Untrue" by Daniel Nair, and it's a young adult novel, and it's definitely a young adult novel. But it won NPR's Best Book of the Year, the New York Times Best Book of the Year, Amazon's Best Book of the Year, Publishers Weekly Best Book of the Year, and the Wall Street Journal Best Book of the Year. So they don't know it's a young adult novel, I don't think. But what I liked about this book, well, many things, but I know nothing about Iran or the Middle East. I don't know why I know nothing about it. Maybe it was, it was Persia when I was in school, so that might be part of it. But I know, and in the simplest terms, from a 11 or 12-year-old boy, he told about segments of their society in the Middle East and etc. And I mean, I know a whole lot about the Middle East now, and it isn't called Persia any longer.
Tell us the name of it one more time.
It's called Everything Sad Is Untrue by Daniel Nair. And there's one little thing I'd like to say about this book to our audience out there, and that is Daniel did not get to say goodbye to his soul friend, Ali Shakari. So if you are out there listening to this podcast, please contact the author of the book, which is Everything Sad Is Untrue.
Wouldn't that be cool if it happened?
Yeah, it would be. But when we cast out to all our fans about if this, that, and the other, do we ever hear back from them?
I think they send us mystic messages, but they don't usually send them in writing because that'd be,
And we would love to hear
pedestrian.
from all of you listeners because although we enjoy talking
How
to each
can
other.
they get in touch with us, though?
Well, Facebook is the easiest way. The Mystic Order of East Alabama Fiction Writers on Facebook. That's our most active social media. We do have a Twitter account, but whoever is in charge of that doesn't use it very often because she's inundated.
I have, my loved ones. One loved one is on Twitter, and everything he says on there makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And most of his friends make absolutely sense.
Or
at
no
all.
sense.
Yeah.
I have a Twitter account for myself, mostly for my writing stuff, and I love it. I love the writers I connect with on Twitter. I think it's amazing that you can actually connect with the writers, the famous ones and the not so famous, and also it's just fun. But yeah, for the kids, they have a new language.
Yeah.
So did we.
Don't know what's going on.
So, Mary, what have you been reading?
Well, I'm on the Gramanti's Way, and
What?
Proust still.
Oh, you're still on Proust.
Of course, yes.
I'm in the third now, and so
How many are there?
6.
Oh,
And
so
each
you're-
of them are about 600 pages.
So you're halfway through.
Well, I will be when I finish book 3. I'm only on page
Is this
100.
a labor of love?
It's really my mother was obsessed with Marcel Proust and the stories and the books, and so I thought, well, I'm going to read it. I was talking about something one day, and she said, "You are having a Proustian moment," and it turned out I'm having a Proustian life, but I didn't really know what she meant, and
It's a
so
long moment.
when I started reading it, I understood what she meant, and I'm In Search of Lost Time, and I am loving it. I know a lot of people have said that it just ruined reading for them because there are some sentences that last for a page and a half, but oh my stars, some of the things that he says. And he's, it could be talking about a bird or a woman or a table, and the language is just gorgeous. But that's actually not what I was going to talk about.
But wait, there's
wait.
more.
Yes. Oh,
Isn't that your opus?
no.
No? Well, then why would you mention it?
Because the word opus is a great work of art.
Oh, okay.
So I've been walking around in my yard a lot, as we do, and there are so many great works of art in my yard spun by these enormous spiders, and everybody that's listening that lives in the South is shaking their heads. And so I finally looked them up and learned the difference between the two big giant spiders. So here you go, y'all. Here's your lesson.
Isn't that where you award them a
No,
Misty.
somebody else is getting a stamp of excellence. This is my opus. I read about them today, and they are great works of art. So the yellow black garden spiders are the ones that look like they have zippers. And
That's-
they're the ones you want to shout the names of your enemies into.
Yes.
And they're nicknamed the writing spiders. And actually, I think I twisted the myth. I think the myth was different. But anyway, you shout things into I think you can shout the names of your enemies into them, and then they'll take care of them.
That's right. They write them in the web, and then
Yeah.
they come get them that night.
So, but the ones we're seeing now are golden orb weavers or banana spiders.
Is
and,
this a book you're reading?
No, I'm telling
this
you
is
about the
nature.
work of
They're
art.
They're on my porch. I'll have to clean them off before y'all come.
So
I thought we were saving the Opus Corner for books we had read.
it's Opus is a great work.
Well, we said
Opus.
Gail.
that's our book reading
So
for the week.
Females are the huge ones that you're seeing, and the little ones are the males. They're not the babies.
Right.
Every person that's listening to this knows these spiders, so I think you should know what you're looking at. That's all. And they don't eat the males. You'll be happy to know.
What happes to them then? Because I saw
They
little.
just die.
Oh.
The males only live for like 2 to 3 weeks. The females can live over a month. And if you've heard the stories about the shawl that they made a long time ago out of the silk of the spider,
Yes.
that's from these spiders.
It is a tough
Takes-
web, too.
yeah.
If you walk through it, it's like being in
It's
a
like
Tarzan movie.
I
You
don't
get
think I've
stuck
ever
there.
seen
That's
these
great.
spiders.
Oh my gosh, Gail, you got to come walk through my yard.
Come sit
my
on my
goodness.
porch.
Yeah, on my front porch too.
They are everywhere. I found one in the house the other day. I was like, "Are you serious?" So anyway, the steel is strong. The silk is stronger than steel. And this is the last thing I'll say because Gail doesn't like me talking about this because it's not a book,
That's right.
but it's an opus because it's a work of art.
So you're changing our form
Yeah,
to meet your
No,
needs.
we're not
Yep.
changing. And if
The
you quit talking, she
silk
can finish and you'll be done with it.
is used for different medical things, and it's used in neurological surgeries because the silk can be attached and help the nerves grow along the piece of silk, and it's
wow.
not detected by the immune system. So I
okay.
knew there were all kinds of reasons why I loved those spiders, and now
And what's
I love
the name
them more.
again?
Well, they have a lot of nicknames: banana spiders, golden orb weavers. Here, I'll tell you their actual name is Trichinophila clavipes, and clavipes means club foot, and they have these furry feet, these furry chunky things on their feet. And Gail, you're going to have to come over and visit mine.
Yeah,
They
you'll
were on
have to
my
come
front
see
porch
that.
last night.
Count
but-
on me for Trillium time.
Okay. Yes. Right. Waxing eloquent, and waxing poetic, as Gail would say.
Yes.
I don't think it was an orb weaver on my porch, but there was a little spider.
Yeah.
I blew at it, thinking, just messing with it. It started vibrating so.
That's how they
quickly.
communicate. They vibrate their abdomens.
Okay, he was so quickly.
Yes.
It looked like two spiders.
Yes, they
it was
vibrate.
fascinating.
Wow.
They don't actually talk.
I've never blown on a spider either.
What? That's how I know if they're
Damn.
alive. I
You
blow
have
on them.
not lived. You have not lived.
I got bitten by a spider about 3
Fairly
weeks
recently,
ago.
didn't you?
If one of these bites you, it won't bother you. They do bite their prey, though.
Well, now that almost sounds like a stamp of excellence, Mary. But we'll
Yeah,
move
to me
on.
it did.
Well, Gail, what is your stamp of excellence this week? Because you always have
mentioned-
one.
I'm glad you mentioned that. My stamp of excellence goes to 2 streamers. The first one is Dark Winds on AMC, and it's based on a novel by Tony Hillerman. And if you haven't seen it, there's a witch in it that scared me, and I knew it was a TV show.
What's it called? Dark
Winds.
A dark wind.
AMC, and it has that Joe Leaphorn is the main character, and His name is
Zach
Zon-
McLaren.
Is
Zach,
it
Zach
Zach or
McLaren.
Zon?
Zach. Zon. You're right. Zon McLaren. You're so right. Yeah.
And he's been in everything.
Yeah.
He's in every show that has Native Americans in it.
Oh, that's
But
good.
and he's a wonderful actor, but he's really good in that. But that's Dark Winds, and the other
He's
one
also
is,
gorgeous.
Yeah, he is, and buff too.
Oh.
Oh, yes. And what a cute little smile.
And-
We're looking at him
Aw.
on
On
I
our
guess
phones.
Google. Yeah, on our phones.
He's on the cover of Cowboys and Indians this month.
Oh,
which
is
a
he?
which
I
is
have
a-
never taken
Does not
that.
sound like a
I haven't
politically
seen
correct
that
magazine.
Spider,
but it is.
and I don't take
Yeah.
Cowboys and Indians. I'm just old.
Sheltered.
But the other one is called The Old Man, and it stars Jeff Bridges, and
Oh
it's
my
on
gosh.
Hulu. And he's a former CIA officer living on the grid.
Off
for
the grid.
Off the grid.
On and off, I
on
guess,
And off.
isn't he?
Yeah, he was
He
on
pops
it for
on
a
and
while.
off.
No, off the grid. For reasons that will become obvious when you watch the show. And these are two of the best streamers on right now.
How far have you gotten into
I
it?
finished them both.
Okay, then you know he may not be the old man.
And on our Airbnb, we couldn't get the Roku TV, not the Roku streamer, but the TV to work.
Yeah.
And we wanted to watch The Last Old Man. And so we zapped the guy on the Airbnb for not having the TV where we could watch The Old Man.
I'll have to agree with Gail. I didn't think about that as being a stamp of excellence, but it is a very
It
good
is. I've been
series.
watching. I'm
Now-
only part of the way through it. but
Gail
it's
has
great.
accused the second generation or whatever they are of making up these words, but I've never heard the word streamer used to, as
It's
a
my
noun
word,
for
and
a
I like it.
streaming
Yeah.
TV
It's my
show.
word.
Okay.
And I like it very much. Do you?
I do like it.
Yeah.
I just thought you were picking up the vernacular of the youngsters, but you just made
I don't
it up.
hang out with those
I
people.
thought maybe you saw it on River's Twitter account or something.
He won't share those things with me.
So, Katie, what is your stamp of excellence?
So it's interesting because I totally agree with Gail about both of those TV shows. But Zon McLaren is also in a TV show called Reservation Dogs.
Oh, yeah. And the
And
second season's
the second
out.
season's about to, or it may have just come out, but it's about to come out. And it is about 4 indigenous teenagers living in Oklahoma on a reservation and how they are borrowing, begging, stealing, trying to figure out a way to get to the promised land, which in their view is California, to get off the res and go to California, modern day. So, and Zon McLaren is the sheriff, or the police chief, I guess, or sheriff, anyway, the tribal law
Honcho.
officer, but he's a goofy one in this one, and a little bit of a mystic too, because he sees the various things. So anyway, he can see sort of psychic things. But
He
anyway,
was in Longmire, too.
he was in Longmire and Westworld. He's been in a lot of different things, but he is just really, he's amazing. But that show is hilarious, but also I think a really great glimpse into what life is like in places that we have no idea what the experience is like. It's also one of let me make sure I'm pronouncing it, Taiki Waititi's.
Taika Waititi,
So
yeah.
Taiki Waititi, who did What We Do in the Shadows. He's done
Jojo Rabbit.
Jojo Rabbit. He's a film and TV producer and star and comedian from New Zealand, who I have a mad crush on. He has a
Me
lovely
too.
wife and great children. So I'm only doing that vicariously through social media. That's
You have a
but-
crush on the lovely wife?
no. Well, I might if I'd met her, but no. He is just funny. But anyway, I just can highly recommend that. And if you have missed the first season, then go back and look at that, and then pick this up after that.
Reservation
It's really
Dogs.
Reservation.
Have you
Dogs.
read The Night Watchman?
Yes.
Because it's
Yes.
also, I
Read
know
it.
you have because you gave it to me.
Oh.
But yeah, that tells you a little bit about reservation
Yeah.
life too, which is really
that
sad.
Louise Erdrich?
It is. And I didn't realize she was Native American.
Yes, partly.
Yeah.
German and Native American. Now I've totally forgotten what I was going to say about
Sorry.
this Zon. Oh yeah, if you're out there listening to us, Zon, we're your big fans.
Yes.
Please connect with us on Facebook.
Or to come to a meeting.
Yeah, well,
We have fun Mystic meetings
yeah.
and road trips. Okay, well, I hear my ding, ding, ding. My phone's dinging away. He's already
calling.
dinging us.
Oh, yay, good.
Yeah.
Oh, I have another slightly mystic thing to go. Do y'all know who Michael O'Neill is? He's an Auburn graduate who's a TV and movie star. If you look him up and look for his picture, he does a lot of character roles. I was in a local barbecue joint last week, and he was in there, and I invited him to my house, and he didn't come. But it's the only time in my life I've ever stopped a celebrity and said, "I love your work. Would you like?" And he's, anyway. So,
would you like to come to my
house
and see my etching?
Right.
Upstairs.
Is that what you said?
Bring
And
your
see my
barbecue to my house. He was very gracious, though. I don't think I felt like a threat to him, or a real promise either.
Yeah. Now, tell me his name again.
Michael O'Neill.
Now, Michael, if you're out there listening to this podcast, connect with us through Facebook.
That's
And
right.
we'll all
should-
go to Katie's house for dinner because she's a great cook.
She is, yes, absolutely. Mary, do you have a stamp of excellence?
I do. It goes to the whole team of veterinarians at Moore's Mill Animal Clinic. Dr. Puckett is he's the golden veterinarian. Our dog Lola has been sick for years and up and down with blood work and trying to figure out what's going on with her. And he finally diagnosed a pretty difficult to diagnose disease. She has atypical Addison's disease, which is
Addison's.
Edison's.
and it's treatable. I mean, we have to watch carefully about the amounts of whatever we give her, but we'll
I
find the right
didn't know
dose.
a dog could have Addison's disease.
They can, and hers is a little different than Addison's, but which makes it much harder to diagnose. And also, it wasn't just him; a whole team out there. And y'all, we took her in on a Friday for an ultrasound, and they kept her for 4 hours when the ultrasound showed nothing, and did these blood tests. And then Saturday morning, I get a call from another veterinarian there saying, here's what we found. She does have atypical Addison's. We've left medicine for you on the porch. They weren't even open.
Oh my
On
gosh.
the porch, on your
That
porch.
On their porch.
Oh.
So, I mean, it's just been like the whole experience with them is just
And
incredible.
where are they located?
Out Moore's Mill in Auburn, out past Grove Hill, but Moore's Mill Animal Hospital. They're just fabulous. Don't anybody else go there because I don't want my veterinarians all tied up.
No problem. No problem at
But
all.
Gail
That's-
and
that-
I love. We could get you a pet, Gail, if you'd like.
That's not to diss any of the lovely veterinarians that we have had in the past, but he's the one that was able to find what's been plaguing her for years.
I've had friends with Addison's.
Yeah.
It's an autoimmune disease.
Mm-hmm.
I think all diseases are autoimmune disease. I don't even
Of
know
some
why I say
sort,
that.
some sort or another.
I thought it was I don't even know. I mean, for Lola, her adrenal glands are not producing the hormones they're supposed to produce. And so we had a dog with Cushing's, which was the opposite of Addison's. So
Can you not get a dog that isn't ill?
those are my only two ills I've ever had. And it's just congenital. I mean, it's not anything. It's not something that they get from something they do. It's just
It's autoimmune.
they're born.
And our dog whisperer, she thinks highly of Dr. Puckett too.
Yes, she does.
So he must be a wonderful vet. Well, I have a couple of stamps of excellence, and I'm going to just briefly go by one. But the Top Gun movie, I took Jimmy on a date, and we saw the Top Gun movie, and it really was good. I don't usually go for sequels, but this one they did a wonderful job on. But my big stamp of excellence is the East Alabama or Arts Association of East Alabama Performance Series coming up. And I meant to grab the brochure. It's sitting on the passenger seat of my car. But they are going to have two acts, if you will, coming from Kiev. One is the Kiev Ballet, and there is
I didn't realize that, and I even read they've changed it, haven't they?
Well, we used to spell Kiev K-I-E-V, and it's now K-Y-V.
But they say Kiev on the radio
Yes,
station.
they say Kiev. It's K-Y-I-V, I think, Kiev. So it may be that you just didn't recognize it. And then
No,
they have
I
an
read
orchestra.
the first bit of in the early summer they had their lineup, and I don't think it was in that lineup.
Yeah, it was.
It was?
This is the same one that's been all
glossy,
along.
Big glossy.
And then they also have the spit it out, Joanne. Orchestra from
Ukraine.
Said
From
yeah.
They also have Ranky
Ukraine.
Tanky coming, which
They
is
got
fabulous.
Ranky, yep, which is a
group
lot
too.
of fun.
Yeah, Mary. I wish I didn't have to take my dogs to the vet, and I could get those season tickets.
But the one that is closest to my heart is the performance opening will be We'll Meet Again, which is a play, it's a musical, written by a local Auburnite. about Henry Stern, who was a local Opalikian. And so
About the Hagedorns, isn't it?
well, it is about the Hagedorns, but it's more about it's written about Henry Stern. The Hagedorns Mr. Hagedorn was his uncle, who talked he and his family out of Germany before Germany closed to the Jews.
I knew the Hagedorns.
Yeah,
They
Well-
owned a dress store in Opelika. and
they
that's
they
where
were
we
the
got our-
only place I could buy jeans back in the day.
Really?
Yeah.
Nobody
So-
else carried jeans?
Well, they did. They when I went to before I went to Europe for the first time, I needed some clothing, and Hagedorn's was the only place I knew to buy them. The mall didn't exist then.
Ah.
Yeah,
Sears. Oh,
Sears.
Sears was in the mall.
no, Sears was there, but in Montgomery Fair, you could go to Montgomery Fair. But
Roses. That's where I used to go.
Yeah.
Before the mall.
there you go.
Roses?
Roses. Yeah. So anyway, y'all go see We'll Meet Again. It's written by locals, and it's about it's written by a local and about a local. And Henry was really one of my favorites. He was a hoot. What can I say? He was a hoot.
I want to see everything on that glossy list they sent me.
Yeah, and well, it's a good lineup. It's not probably it's got enough diversity to keep everyone
Yeah.
happy. So, where have you been, and what have you seen, Katie?
So I have missed a podcast or two lately, partly because I have been lucky enough to do some traveling. And so back at the very end of May and 1st of June, I was able to go to Wyoming to a conference called Literature and Landscape of the Horse. And so we went out
Oh, by the way, we hated you for that, but that's
well,
go ahead.
I've heard that. I'm glad y'all are allowing me to sit at the table. And
I'm
I'll try not
stewing
to-
in
I'll try not
anger
to
and
rub
silence
salt
and
into the
greed.
wound here, but anyway, it was at a guest ranch. What sometimes it's
'Cause
called
you're not a
ranch.
dude.
I'm not a dude, but there were some nice dudes there too, and nice dudettes too. But anyway, the two women who run this, Paige Lambert, who's a writer and also a horsewoman, and then Sherry Griffith. And Sherry is just an amazing horse woman. And so we would spend the day, we'd get up in the morning and we would go riding near Laramie, Wyoming, across these, vistas. And one day we spent an entire day going up sort of the side of a mountain and having lunch out there on horseback. And then in the afternoon we would talk about riding and things like that. But I had never, I grew up riding horses and hadn't been really on a horse for 40, 50 years, something like that, for any length of time. I've been on and off horses occasionally, but not 6 days on horseback. And it was so amazing. And the people at the ranch, V-Bar Ranch, they were amazing too. But that landscape is just so remarkable and so different from where we live. So
It is.
anyway, I just had a lovely
So
time.
was it barren with
it's
cactus?
everything.
Not some cactus, more barren, but with a lot of just low brush and things like that. It was not really desert in the sense that we think of as like the Southwest would be and that sort of thing. But mountains right behind it with
Yeah.
snow still on them and
Colors.
Yeah, we actually, for the first time in my life, I herded a cow. Not well, but but luckily they weren't relying on me to make that.
Did you have dogs to herd
There were
with you?
some dogs. Yeah, dogs.
I
and-
used to own a cow pony, and what she was good for was breaking people's arms, because just when they were least expecting it, she'd
go in the other direction
Yes.
after a cow or whatever.
Yeah.
She'd cut.
and then they'd fall off and break their arms. So
Bless them.
Yes, my horse was an Appaloosa named Apache, and he was
Oh.
lovely to me
that's
and very
perfect.
kind to me, because I'm sure he was thinking, oh no, who is this person on my back who does not remember what she's supposed to be doing? So
No,
it was
they're
a
real
great
keen
experience.
to people with all kinds of problems. So Katie, he probably really
I think he was very.
I have to rib Katie because I'm so jealous. But in about 15 minutes, I'm going to get over being jealous and be happy for her.
okay.
Well, we're happy for
Did you
her.
actually write anything while you were there?
We didn't. We had time to write, and we were able to do some writing, but it was not really an intensive writing thing. More of a discussion and an opportunity to talk a lot about the mind of the horse, as well as like this. Sherry is a trainer, and so she would talk about how to train a horse, which is really more about understanding where the horse's mind is, not brutalizing a horse, things like that. So it was just a really fascinating thing, and also made me realize how much we ask of these animals, and how much, even growing up, we rode we were good riders and we were very conscientious. But we were asking an animal to let us climb on their back and make them go through paces and things like that. And it's it's asking a lot. So it made me appreciate what these animals have done for us and
Mystic Mary has written a story that will make you cry. I don't know if you were here. You weren't here when she read it. Yeah, it's great.
So, anyway, that was my travel.
It's great. That and my travel is basically my Mystic Week, and that is in Wetumpka. We stayed at a place, we camp when we go, and we stayed at a place called Camp Sherry on the Coosa. And so we were right
Camp
there.
Sheriff?
Camp Sherry.
Sherrye?
Sherrye.
Oh.
She spells it a little different. On the Coosa, but downtown Wetumpka was just and we had to go downtown to get the kayaks and to eat. And it was so just quaint and old town. And there was, we saw the Big Fish house and
they've got a crater. I mean, an impact crater in Wetumpka too.
And Jimmy wouldn't go see it.
Okay, road trip. I'll go with you.
Margie and I took a road trip to Wetumpka and invited all of you guys. And
did you go to the crater?
We didn't go to the crater, but we did go to the. There's a couple on, I guess, House and Garden Channel.
Yeah. Have done
that redid Wetumpka downtown.
Yeah.
Storefronts and then a couple of houses in town.
Didn't y'all kidnap somebody or
They
something?
kidnapped us.
Oh,
they kidnapped us.
Yeah, you told about that.
If he wasn't 87, we would have been a little annoyed.
That's right.
But we got in his big Cadillac and he drove us around town and showed us. So it was a great trip. And also George's is there, and I know all of y'all are big meat eaters like I am. But George has the animals on his property and butchers the animals, and they go from literally from hoof
hoof to table.
to George's butcher shop there. My favorite is his sausage with rosemary and tomato. Yum.
And Gail has just told you about my Mystic City, so I'm going to go into my Mystic Bite, although she's already talked about the myth. But we did eat at, and this, I think it's hysterical because we were camping, and what do you do when you camp? You sit around the campfire and tell scary stories. Well, we ate at the Coosa Cleaver. And
Lord.
And so I thought it sounded just like a horror story. Yes.
Yeah.
What did you
Seriously.
eat?
I ate a chicken and greens sandwich with a side order of mac and cheese, and it was absolutely delicious. It was yummy. I just wanted something different. Some of the others got not a BLT, but when they make a BLT with the fried green tomatoes, and it was excellent. And the remarkable thing about it was our waiter, who was tall, thin. He never. There were 8 of us. Keep that in mind. There were 8 of us. He never wrote down a thing.
Yeah.
And got all of our orders right.
Because he was an idiot savant?
No, I think he was probably a savant. Period. He was beautiful.
A savant.
And I would say that. But you could tell he's very, very smart. Very, very smart.
Handsome, beautiful waiter. If you're listening to our podcast,
Get in touch with us on Facebook.
get in touch with us. We'll come eat at the restaurant when you're there.
And Michael O'Neill will take you with us too.
You think I left without his name? His name is Tyler.
Okay, we are definitely doing a Mystic road trip to Wetumpka. Can we? We can add canoeing.
We went
to
through
it, too.
2 museums there, both of them extremely interesting. One of them holds the body of the work for Fitzpatrick, last name, Alabama artist. I'll think of it in a minute. And the other one was just, they had an old yellow electric chair. I thought it was
we
quite
put
You told
pictures
us
of
a
you
big
on
mom, big
Facebook.
yellow mama.
Yeah, that was for
Big
your last
yellow
year's
mama.
birthday. That was your birthday picture,
It
not this
was?
year, but last year.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Gail, you also have a Mystic Bite.
I do. I went to Asheville to visit the in-laws and the outlaws. And I always have my expectations really low when I go there because I'm not part of that family. So I don't know how interesting this is going to be. So it was on my list to go to Trader Joe's and the grocery store. That's what I wanted to do in Asheville. And of course, Asheville's a wonderful town. But I got to Ingalls, and they had the most gorgeous Cherokee purple tomatoes I've ever seen in my life. Not a blemish on them. It didn't have the weird green top. You know, it was just Cherokee purple tomatoes. So we bought 5 pounds of them, and we've eaten every single one of them.
Yum.
And in order to these people to be fond of me, I took a chocolate cake, and I wanted to tell y'all about this chocolate cake. Many people have made this chocolate cake, and y'all might have, but it's a chocolate cake mix. I use yellow cake mix, a box of instant pudding, a container of sour cream, 4 eggs, vegetable oil, water, and 2 cups of chocolate chips. And you can make that, and if you follow the cooking directions, it's the best chocolate cake on earth.
Sounds pretty solid.
It is
Yes.
good. The only
Actually-
problem with it is getting it out of the pan.
So was it
My-
in a bundt pan or a layer?
I put
wasn't
it
a layer
in
cake?
just an angel food pan.
Yeah.
But I actually cut out for the bottom some parchment paper and also oiled and floured the whole thing.
So it came out okay.
Well,
Oh no,
mostly.
My sister-in-law, because we had a couple of birthdays on our trip, made that very cake. How mystical.
It's so good, isn't it?
But she made it in little individual bundt pans. And
Oh, how
yes, we
cute.
pigged out.
It's a good cake. And just to be really, bad eating it, no telling how many calories, I made a topping for it that is a half a cup of chips,
chocolate
semi-sweet
semi-sweet.
chocolate chips, and 2 tablespoons of lard. Lard, Crisco lard. I didn't even know they made Crisco lard.
Oh, yeah.
They do.
It's great for Mexican food.
And so you just mix that up, and then when it kind of cools, you drip it over the top of this cake, which added to the calorie count. I think it's something like 600 calories per piece.
per inch.
I think
for
that
one bite.
lard is 600 calories per teaspoon, but so maybe more. All right. Well, thank you, ladies. That was
Yeah.
very interesting. But today, our topic is that we're going to read what we write. Since we are writers, every once in a while we'd like to share with you what's going on in our heads. And I'm just going to go around the circle to my left. So, Katie, would you care to start us off with reading?
I can. So I'm going to read one that I've not ever even read to the mystics.
Ooh,
So,
yay.
This will be new to all of us, including me, kind of. You'd start reading and think, well, I can't remember this, but it's called Shaped Like a Serpent.
Ooh, I like it already.
I've often thought that money, not an apple, caused the fall of humankind from Eden. Not that I'm all that religious, but I grew up going to enough church that I am all too familiar with the story of Adam and Eve and the serpent. I, however, have come to believe that the serpent in the tree is a metaphor for money. After all, what is the shape of a dollar sign? For most of my life, serpentine. Okay. Mary was making
We
a
got
face
it.
like, oh, okay. For most of my life, money has been the root of much consternation, if not evil. I've never been poor, but I've often struggled, especially the years I spent as a one-income single mother of three children. During those lean years, it was not uncommon to run out of money before the monthly paycheck arrived, and there were more than a few times when I was unsure if I could pay for Christmas, which is why I made my first and so far only visit to a pawn shop to borrow $500 of Christmas money against my paid-for Mazda protege. The grizzled man who ran the pawn shop was missing the little finger on his right hand, an absence that always drew my gaze every time he tallied up my weekly payments. It gave him a kind of perverse charisma as he punched the stiff numbers of an old-fashioned tabulator with his right hand. His name was Mr. Lee, and he was not friendly. But I later realized he was kind, at least to me. And the experience of going in every Tuesday to pay just enough to keep my interest from ballooning or my car from being lost was humbling, and great material for short stories. Somehow I scraped enough payments together to pay off my loan in 6 months. And on the last day of my mandatory visits to the pawn shop, Mr. Lee handed me my car title and a few extra dollars change with his four-fingered right hand and said, "I don't want to see you back in here. It's no way to live." I walked out and went straight to a florist where I used the measly change from my last payment to buy a bouquet of sunflowers that then went straight back to the pawn shop. When I laid them on the counter, Mr. Lee raised his right hand to his forehead and rubbed it. An act of puzzlement, I suppose. I doubt that happened to him very often. Before he could say anything, I blurted out, "Thank you," and dashed away, never to darken his door again. The spontaneous purchase of sunflowers for a gnarled pawnbroker is no doubt a prime example of what not to do when you have trouble making ends meet. It's definitely not good budgeting protocol, but those few dollars may have been some of the best money I've ever spent, and the least serpent-like as well.
Very
Oh, I'm
nice.
so glad
nice.
to hear that.
Very nice.
It was nice.
It
Yeah.
was nice. I just always feel
Did
a little
you
bad
just
when we
write that?
say the serpents are bad.
It's something I've written for years. I've wrote years ago when all this was going on back, and have just revised it over the years. So I pulled it out not long
Very
ago.
We're kind audience. We're working on our next book, and it's about our lives, stages of our lives. That's perfect for
Which
it.
was exactly why I pulled it out. It's hopefully gonna make it muster to go into the book. So.
yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
You know, I hate to ask this, but where was that pawn shop? Because I think I know
At
him.
5 Points in Opelika.
I do know him.
I don't
Have
know
you
if he's still-
represented him in a?
Gail, you're next to read. Go ahead.
Because there were
We'll
only
talk about that off air. I'd love to know the details.
yeah. Tell all. Because there are four of us, and I was worried, and I don't know why, because these people are gabby, but I was worried that there wouldn't be enough information for the podcast because there were only four of us. I brought a poem and a story to read, and I decided now after listening to all this that I only need read the poem.
If only we could think of things to talk about.
So you can hear the story. The story is about low Christmas and high Christmas, which is what we celebrated in our
Save
family.
that for our Christmas special.
I think I will.
Yeah.
So instead, I'm going to read the poem because y'all are gabby.
No.
And this poem is a memory from my childhood, which will go in our new book. And if you're interested in our new book, look us up on Facebook and contact us.
Yeah. We'll definitely let you know when it comes out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But this is called Mid-Century Man and a Mule Named William. A black man named Bruce and a mule named William traveled in a buckboard down my street on Saturdays. My road is a straight shot to the A&P where they are headed. If Bruce and William are having a traveling slow day, we, the neighboring children, drop by the wagon begging for a ride. Most times, the old man and the mule ignore the congregation. Yet, on a rare occasion, the buckboard comes to a halt. If it gets on, you be walking back, states the man Bruce. We clamber aboard in happy acceptance of this contract. It is then Bruce, a singular man, speaks to us in tongues. Mesmerized and enchanted, we become remarkably stilled. This unexplained marvel of language we take in stride. The century now turned. I am old as the man in my memory. In reminiscence, I remain puzzled by the curious verse. Was it rudiments of a lost dialect, a charismatic spiritual? Was Bruce bamboozling the brood for his amusement? While the mystery of the spoken word goes unanswered, I will hold the prose in my keeping as an ancient blessing, so worth the long walk to the A&P.
Oh,
Nice.
that's wonderful.
Gosh, you know what? If I had gotten on a buckboard when I was little, pulled by a mule, I'd still be talking about it nonstop. That just sounds like a
It was
childhood
amazing.
fantasy.
It was amazing. And the strange thing now that we see Auburn, Alabama, which is just concrete and buildings, was the paved road stopped up the hill from where I lived at was the Ebenezer Baptist Church. Mm-hmm. And so he was literally coming off a dirt road going down the paved road to the A&P. I mean, it was an old time.
right.
And I don't think nowadays children would be allowed to jump on a buckboard no matter who was trying.
No.
We did
Or would they
lots
be
of
allowed to have a
things.
buckboard on the
That's
streets
right. We
now?
did
Yeah,
lots of
a
things.
mule going down the
chilling.
street. We
A
had
mule named William,
yeah.
too. I mean, that's just cool as grits.
We had goats and horses in our back pasture yard. We had an extra yard like you do, Mary. that we kept animals, and occasionally a horse would escape, and the president of the university would call us and tell us to come get our horse. He'd be chomping down on Sanford Hall's grass, so it was a different time.
Oh, we're
there to
their
fertilize.
azaleas.
When we moved into Cary Woods in the year 2000, I had a friend that lived on just a street over, and she had a backyard, and she would sometimes trailer her horse into town and keep it in her backyard for a few nights and ride around the neighborhood. But lo and behold, I don't know what kind of people would do this, but some people complained, and of course it isn't legal, and so she had to stop doing it. I'm sure if nobody had complained, they wouldn't have said anything, but I don't know. I mean, sometimes I want to say to these people, you want my life? Because, you know, I'm not going to go making up problems like somebody else putting a horse in their yard for 2 nights every once in a while, but, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Downstream.
Maybe they didn't have anything better to do.
Exactly.
Well, I like your poem, Gail. And
Yeah,
I like it too.
Very
I've read it
nice.
to y'all before.
Yes. Well, Gail, even though you read that to us, like all good poems, every time I hear it, I hear something different, or I hear it in a little bit of a different way.
This is one of my favorite poems I've written ever. And,
Very nice.
So
Okay.
I'll have to go through my poem notebook and pull out some more for the next time we read.
Do it, because I enjoy them. They're very good.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yes.
Joanne. Thank you, girls. You know, I've enjoyed editing y'all's work. It is.
So let's see. Who else has a story? Call them somebody.
Yeah, it's better. Let's hear some more work. Mary.
Okay, so mine, of course, came from a prompt from 40 Days and 40 Rights, and the prompt was witness, and then, you know, you write a story, and it turned out I kept the name of my story, Witness. Okay, here's my story. Today, Joe and I drove past the Wilson property, and my heart sank. There, just in front of the lake, was a sea of red dirt and a circle of tractors. They're clearing the lot and filling the lake. Joe has privy to the details of the development, and he shared them with me. There's going to be stores and houses and a whole mess of things there, his confidant, who sold the property to the developers, told him. She also told him that they used to get calls back in the day from the neighbors because they let the local kids party down at the lake. They paid no mind to the neighbors, but finally stopped letting the kids come because of the liability. I mean, what if one of them broke their arm or something, she said. Broke their arm? Ha! I was there back in the day, and I'm betting there were plenty of broken arms. We did some hardcore partying at Wilson's Lake. Once, one of the good old boys accidentally drove his car into the lake. He scrambled out of his sinking Chevette, swam to shore, and we all stood and watched that car sink with a big whoosh that sent chills down my arms. Wilson's Lake was the scene of my first ever high school party. I went with my friend Dana. We tagged along with my older brother and his friends. Dana and I were in 9th grade, all of 14 years old, and supremely excited to be going to a real high school party. We were thick in the world of lockers, pep rallies, voluntary student council, building the homecoming float, and now this, a party. We pulled up in my brother's old black Baja Bug, joining the other cars that surrounded the bonfire like pioneer wagons circling around the camp. Girls and boys stood around laughing, everyone in flannel shirts and Levi's. I smelled cigarettes and pot and the comforting familiarity of burning wood. Music blasted out of one of the cars, its doors open, our DJ for the night. Can't be round this kind of show no more. Everyone sang along with little feet. Dana and I walked over to the keg and served ourselves heaping servings of foamy beer into red Solo cups. And then we mingled, drifting apart and coming back together in waves. One of the older guys, a senior maybe, started talking to me. He got real close. His name was Danger. At least that's what everybody called him. He was on the football team. I knew his name, but pretended not to when he told me. Let's go sit in my car and listen to music, he said. You like Fleetwood Mac? Of course, I said, a given. I owned a copy of Rumors and played it thin on my Sears stereo in the bedroom. I followed Danger to his car and got in. I was scared to death of him, but so excited to be asked to be included in these things real high school kids did. Me, little mousy me. We listened to secondhand news, drank our beer, and then he reached for the glove compartment. There's something in here we need, he said. I froze. Oh no, not a condom. I was not prepared for this. I'd never even kissed anyone other than the neighbor guys I'd played spin the bottle with. Oh, and Jamie, who I kissed the first night of ninth grade under the dogwood trees in my front yard and then tried my hardest to pretend it never happened. Please, oh please, I said to myself, don't let it be a condom. He opened the door of the glove and pulled something out red, about the size of a deck of cards, and tossed it into my lap. I recognized the gold edges and embossed cover at once. I smiled with nervous relief. It was not a condom at all, but a pocket New Testament with Psalms and Proverbs. Oh, stamped with that little Gideon lamp in the corner. They gave those things out everywhere, gas stations, grocery stores, banks. What next, I wondered. Is he going to witness to me? But then he laughed, and I laughed, and next thing you know, he kissed me. I guess I kissed him back. I didn't know what I was doing. For the next 3 songs, Danger and I made out, mostly on first base, with a little clumsy sliding into second over the shirt. When You Can Go Your Own Way came on, it was like a hint from the heavens to stop. Well, should we join the party now, he said. I was both relieved to be done and anxious that I had not lived up to something, feelings which would move in and make themselves at home in my head for the rest of my high school years. As we approached the bonfire, I wondered if everyone would know what we'd been doing and if my lips were going to be chapped. I soon drifted away from Danger and back to my friend Dana. It turned out that while I'd been making out with Danger, my friend Dana was doing the same thing with Danger's friend Tim. I wonder now if they planned it. A couple of senior boys watching these freshman girls arrive as doe-eyed as a brand new day. No matter. I had my first makeout session and my first party under my belt in one fell swoop, and I was ready to move on to whatever life had to offer me next. And so, it seems, is Wilson's Lake, I think, watching the piles of red dirt recede in the rearview mirror.
Wow.
Very
That is
nice.
great. I do too.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
I
well,
like the doe-eyed.
the doe-eyed day.
Doe-eyed is a new morning.
Doe-eyed.
Well, we have gone from childhood to teenage to young adult. We're going to old age with mine.
Hey, Joanne's going to tell a future story because she's just as sprightly and
that's
young
right.
as can be.
Is this how you imagine your old age?
I was shy, y'all. Shy. I had to confess to the girls at the clerk's office this morning of how old I was. Yeah. And luckily they asked I'll put it that way. They said, when I don't walk in there with a suit, they looked at me and I'm in just street clothes today. And this is municipal court I'm talking about. And they looked and I said,
You don't wear a suit to municipal court?
I do wear a suit to municipal court, but today I wasn't wearing a suit. I was wearing street clothes. So when I walked in, one of the girls looked at me and said, you look even littler. I said, oh,
Well, isn't that what
you.
Gail
Yeah.
said when she met you? She said, your voice is a lot taller than you.
Did I say that?
Something
That's a
like
great
that.
line.
One of my
Yeah, it was really cute.
one of my favorite compliments was from Margie's husband, who I had dealt with over the phone for many, many years. And when we finally wound up at a conference together, and I stood up, introduced myself, and said something, he came over to me, shook my hand, and said, "You talk a lot taller."
Oh, maybe I just attributed that to Gail. Oh, well. Y'all can share
Yeah, it wasn't me.
Gail and Wayne.
I want to say one thing about old age. I went to a family reunion, and there were 5 of us that had reached old age. And one of the participants, the younger one, said, "We've got to take a lot of pictures because I don't know, some of these people may not be back again."
Yeah, that's
And
right.
I won the old person prize because everybody said, "Annie Gale will be back." Oh, I feel so flattered because the rest of them were feeble, I guess.
Oh, dear. Sprightly and young.
Well, I call this Muffaletta. Hey, Joanne. John Drow nudged me. Despite being lawyers, we were both sitting behind the bar, that railing that separates attorneys and the legal personnel from the onlookers. We were awaiting the court to call our cases. "The judge just called you," she indicated with her elbow toward the bench. Both her hands were on her cell phone as she continued to text. I looked up from the report that I had been reading. The judge, his court reporter, and the juvenile court clerk were all looking at me. I stood and responded with a respectful, "Sir?" Judge sat on the raised platform 3 feet above the courtroom floor, surrounded by the wooden beadboard that corralled his desk. As the judge continued, "How long do you think your case will take, Miss Camp? We may need to reschedule." I concentrated on his lips. They were moving, but I could not make out exactly what he was saying. The clerk intervened. "Judge, that case should be short. It's the Montgomery case that will take almost all day." "All right, then. Continue that case until Friday, and we'll adjourn until after lunch with your case, Miss Camp." As we filed out of the courtroom, the bailiff at the door winked at me. "Fall asleep," he smiled. "Pardon?" He repeated himself. "No," I laughed, "just deep in that DHR report." From my mother, my sisters and I inherited a toothy smile, a thick head of hair, and hearing loss. I would visit my mother in her later years in the duplex she purchased after my father died, moving out of the big house that her 12 children finally flew when her 12 children finally all flew the nest. I have a speech problem today. If the television was on, it boomed through the small living and kitchen area. The volume had to be lowered before any conversation could begin. Even in a face-to-face conversation, I noted a concentration on her face as she tried to interpret what I was saying. I would gently prod, "Mom, why don't you get your hearing checked?" When she would complain about the new pastor mumbling, I again would prompt, "Mom, the advancements they have made in hearing aids are remarkable." After years of such urging, she finally asked, "Joanne, what makes you think I want to hear?" The next to fall was my younger sister, Kathy. Although she had little post-secondary education, she had worked her way through the ranks from secretary to officer of the bank. While in charge of a branch, when the higher-ups were off at a conference, a young teller approached her desk, wringing her hands. "Miss Kathy, what should we do?" "What should we do about what?" she replied. "The alarm, Miss Kathy. The alarm is going off." It appeared that the deficit was tone-based. While I could hear most people, if there was no background noise, I could not make out what Judge was saying without concentration and lip reading. One day, frustrated, during a conference with the other attorneys and the judge, I exclaimed, "Judge, you and I should be married." He gave me a puzzled look. "Because I have become completely tone-deaf to the sound of your voice." When the decline began, I could not determine. When my children were younger, I had the hearing of a greater wax moth. To whispers about forbidden activities in a room down the hallway, I would respond, "Don't even think it." When my younger son slipped into the pantry and stealthily tried to open a cookie package, I ordered, "Not before dinner," to which he replied, "How do you know?" And once when my teen tried to sneak out, I heard the swoosh of the downstairs window opening from the upstairs bedroom and was able to intercept him at the corner of the house. But now genetics and age had taken that ability away and replaced it with tinnitus, the sound of tree frogs and cicadas. In the audiologist's sound booth, with an apparatus in my hand and the instructions of the audiologist in my mind, press the button when you hear a tone. For a long while, all I heard was my symphony of night critters. Then, finally through the muffle, a tiny sound pierced the quiet, then another. But soon they dissolved into my background noise. Then a deeper timbre crescendoed and faded. After a series of sounds hummed in each ear, the audiologist's voice crackled in my headphones with a request to repeat each word after her. Read, pan, food, tire, ring, ditch, red, luck. Some of the words I understood. Some left me guessing. When the testing was done, she smiled, took me to a conference room, explained the test results, and introduced me to the remarkable advancements of hearing aids, advancements that came with their own sticker shock. When the instruments arrived, I wore them religiously, but did not let anyone, not even my other hard-of-hearing sisters, know of my new gadgets. The aids tucked neatly behind my ears, hidden by that inherited full head of hair. A nearly invisible tube connected the earpiece with the device. No visible change, but the world had become so loud. The rustle of leaves in the trees, the whine of tires on the road, the hiss of air conditioning vents. But there was also the whisper of a sister's secret, a called greeting of a friend, and the clarity of an instructor's lesson. Gradually, though, family and coworkers noticed my newfound attention. While the ability to hear clearly again is wonderful, at the end of a long day, as I crawl into bed and remove my hearing aids, the world softens. sounds muffle again, and I relax into a cocoon of quiet. Because sometimes, what makes you think I want to hear?
That's
Love
so
that.
wonderful.
It is wonderful.
That's my favorite thing you've written.
Thank
It
you.
really is
Thank you.
good.
Thank you.
And that'll be in the book, too.
And I'm sorry
Yes.
you're deaf.
I know. It's all right. Like I said, I get to not hear sometimes. Well, we are
That's
going
fabulous.
to close up with our. Has anyone had a mystic moment? And I asked the group specifically, have you ever had a mystic moment during your writing? Katie?
I have, I have so often heard, especially fiction writers, talk about how they'll start writing something and the characters just take over. And, it's the book just pours out of them. Well, as a nonfiction writer, I often get in the groove and in the flow, but it's very rare that I have that experience of the people I've interviewed or things like that just sort of taking over and leading the story. And many years ago, I overheard someone tell this story about a family from this area who were quite the characters. And the gist of the story was that the husband and wife were always having trouble, and he was always finding great ways to win her back. And one of the ways that he did it after she got mad and left him was to put a cassette tape of When a Man Loves a Woman in the church sound system. So instead of church music coming out of the steeple on Sunday morning, it was Percy Sledge. Anyway, I loved that story. So I sat down that night that I heard it, and the story was told to me, and I made up this entire short story based on that little piece of a story. And the story just wrote itself. And it's still not perfect. And as a nonfiction writer and not feeling completely confident about my fiction chops, it's not one that I have ever tried to publish, but it's the story that is the nearest and dearest to my heart because it was mystical. It was when that story wrote itself.
I can't wait to hear parts of it or whatever you're going to share.
You need to bring that back. You need to bring
love
it to
that
the next
story.
Mystic
We'll
meeting.
see that. We'll hear that on Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah.
At
Gail,
Mystic meeting.
have you ever
Yeah.
had a mystic moment in
I
writing?
have had a mystic moment, and all you shared with me. But when you wrote that to us on a text, I had already
Done your
done my-
homework,
and
I know.
had a mystic moment that did not have to do with writing.
So give us both.
So I'm going to give you both. I'll give you the non-writing one first. And that was my brother-in-law set up a bird feeder for my sister-in-law who's in a wheelchair and can't do it herself. That a big bear had knocked over in the winter getting the bird seed out. So he set this up and went and filled her 2 bird feeders and got it all nice, and we're all sitting there smiling at the bird feeders that they will so enjoy. And here came a big black bear in their backyard and knocked it over.
Oh, nice.
And sat there and ate this entire 2 huge bird feeders worth of seed, ignoring us. And all the neighbors came over and stood on the patio with us to watch the bear eat the bird seed. So that was pretty mystic.
Yeah.
And a bear does not look anything like a bird. That bear had on a collar, by the way.
Oh,
yeah.
So it was being
Tracking him.
tracked. Yeah.
When I went to Kings Canyon, a bear ran by our car. Just kept up with us, and that bear had a collar, and so we said, "Oh well, they put that collar on because that's a friendly bear."
No,
so we
bad
got
bear.
we got to the ranger station. She says, "No, we put the collars on the ones that are way too familiar and will eat you." So, but anyway, my mystic moment for writing was. I can't remember if this was our first book, but it was our first book with our old publisher. And
Johnny.
yes, and it was our opening night, and he had only printed 200, and we told him to bring all 200. And he left, all but maybe 50 in the car. And he had to keep running back to his car, and we sold out all 200 books in one night.
Yes.
That's the way you impress your publisher.
Yes.
Impress your publisher. But anyway, that was certainly a mystic moment, and it was a fun one. It was really fun. I want to repeat it with this other book.
Yes. Mary, what's your mystic writing moment?
Well, most of the time when I'm writing, I don't know what I'm writing about until I've written it, and then it's mystical. But I couldn't. No concrete examples were coming, so I'm going to tell you a mystic moment that I wrote about. But I'm not going to read it. But my grandfather, the family legend was that my grandfather whistled on the Grand Ole Opry, at the Grand Ole Opry, under the name the Dixie Mockingbird. And my dad told us that story.
Is this true?
Apparently. And so, I mean, I heard it growing up, and so I assumed it was true because my dad told me. And my grandfather worked for a life insurance company, the National Life Insurance Company. I knew that. So, do y'all remember when the Ken Burns country music series came out, which was one of the best things I've ever seen in my entire life? And I wrote about it, but at the end, what really was so exciting was to learn that the Grand Ole Opry was started by the National Life Insurance Company. And they would line up the acts for the Grand Ole Opry to promote their radio station, which was WSM, We Shield Millions. So as I'm watching the whole series, you know, talk about Proustian moments, my whole childhood was just coming back to me, you know, remembering the first time I heard the Carter family and all that. And then when they got to that part about the Grand Ole Opry and the tie-in with the National Life Insurance, it's like, it's true.
Yeah.
My granddaddy did. I mean, that would be the connection.
Yeah.
And just the other day on Facebook, I'm scrolling around and I see somebody say, didn't Bob Mount's dad whistle under the name of the Dixie Mockingbird at the Grand Ole Opry? And I was like, yeah, I wrote about that.
I wonder, is
So
there
it's
a
like
little
double
film out
mystic
there
moment.
somewhere if you typed it in?
I don't know. No, I've looked for it and I hadn't found it on the internet. So
Okay, out there, audience, if you can find
For the
Dixie
Dixie
Mockingbird.
Mockingbird.
we would certainly like you to send
Yeah.
it to our Facebook page.
but it did make pretty good sense at the time. And my dad could whistle out of both sides of his mouth. He was kind of famous for that. And he'd walk up and down the halls of Funchess Hall, and everybody knew it was him because he was whistling in stereo. And he lost the ability to do that, I guess, in his late 70s, and we all missed it a lot.
You can
Oh,
whistle in
wow.
stereo. So part of it came out of his nose.
No,
he
on
put
both
his
sides of his
tongue in the
mouth,
middle of
yeah.
his mouth and whistle out of both sides of his mouth. I can't
So
do
he
it.
could change the cadence on either side, or at least
Yeah.
switch it down.
Yeah, I mean, he
Might
was
be
a
change
good
the pitch.
frog whistler and, frog
Yeah,
caller. He
that's
did a
true.
lot of
I did it.
sounds.
I can't do it.
He did his tongue. We're all sitting around trying to whistle out of both
Yeah.
sides of our mouths.
I sound like the mockingbird.
It'd be like
Okay,
I've
that was
always been a
mystical.
whistler. My mystic moment was the first time the Mystics used to. We've gotten to writing memoirs. You've heard today, but at the beginning of us, we wrote fiction, and of course, I started novels. I think I started 8. No,
At least.
and so now in my retirement, I'm trying to go back and finish those novels. And I was reading through one, and the Mystics will remember it's about a girl that gets kicked out of her car and runs to the beach, and she lives in this house that's abandoned for a while. And it made me cry. And I thought,
Yeah.
shoot, why is she why is this making me cry? I wrote it. I mean, I know what's going to happen to her.
Created these lives and you miss them.
I do. And reading her story and one part of it about her mom made me
Yeah.
cry.
So that's one.
We
probably
haven't
artist.
heard that part of it.
Well, the young girl, she keeps having, she has some flashbacks. She's gotten involved with this really bad dude who literally kicks her out of the car, and she's at her ends. They were going to run away to Florida together, and she goes and she's an artist, but because her mother was an artist, and her mother has a brain tumor, and so she goes to visit her in the hospital. And she's a young girl at
Is
the
her
time.
mother in Florida as well?
No, her mother is not.
Flashback.
She has run away to Florida, and as she's talking
If you tell
to,
too much, I won't buy it.
then I won't tell any. But you
I think
asked,
I
Gail.
remember this.
You were the one who
I
asked.
know, it's my favorite of all the 8.
Anyway, and then the last part where she's talking to her mama, and she whispers that she knows her mama's dying, and that she said, "I painted up all the paper," and that made me cry.
That's pretty good, Joanne.
I
That's a
painted
sign
up
that you
all the
need to,
paper. What does that mean?
do
I
something with
painted
that
up all
book,
the
for sure.
paper.
She used all her mother's paper and artwork.
Oh,
You'll have to read the book. to
yes,
figure
I
it
will.
out.
I'll buy it from you. In fact, do you remember me telling you if you didn't finish the book, I would? And
Yes. And one of these days I will. I am. I'm going to. What have we said? So thank you, dear listeners. We were glad to be with you again. We're glad that you were with us. Please tell all your friends, because this is too much fun, really. Come on. So, ladies, we enjoyed it. And remember to be the moth.
Wait.
You were trying to trick
I
us
wasn't
there,
gonna
weren't you?
feel. I wasn't gonna fall for that for a minute.
Fell. Look at Joanne. She's
That devilish look in her eye, too.
I got it.
Leading us down the
Not the
I
flame,
know.
y'all.
Yes, be the
Be the
flame,
flame,
not the moth.